I spent 24 years hiding the fact that I was a male omega, a biological anomaly. But one disastrous night in a dimly lit warehouse changed everything. Now, I'm staring at a positive pregnancy test, and the father is Christian Romano, the most feared mafia boss in the city. Let me get one thing straight right out of the gate. Being a male omega isn't like the romance novels make it out to be. It's not about finding a fated mate or living a life of pampered luxury. In the real world, it's a medical anomaly. It's a target painted on your back from the day your secondary presentation hits. According to the Bureau of Population Statistics, male omegas make up less than 0.01% of the population. We are considered fragile, highly fertile commodities in a society heavily dominated by aggressive alphas. My name is Zio. To the rest of the world, I was just a quiet, mild-mannered beta working as a junior accountant at Whitman & Co., a respectable mid-level firm in the heart of the city. I kept my head down, paid my taxes, and strictly adhered to a punishing regimen of black market suppressants. The legal ones weren't strong enough for male biology, so I got mine from a discreet contact, Dr. Benham Harrison, operating out of a rundown clinic in the East End. The pills gave me migraines and made my hands shake, but they neutralized my scent and kept my unpredictable heat cycles entirely dormant. They kept me safe, until they didn't. It started on a Tuesday in late October. My manager, a perpetually sweating beta named Aaron, dropped a massive stack of folders onto my desk. We were auditing Silver Star Imports, a logistics company operating out of the commercial docks. Everyone in the office knew Silver Star was a front for the Romano syndicate. The Romanos practically owned the city's underground. They ran the ports, the illegal casinos, and half the politicians. At the top of the food chain was Christian Romano, an alpha so ruthless that his own lieutenants refused to look him in the eye. Aaron told me I needed to go down to Warehouse 42 to verify a discrepancy in their physical inventory. I tried to refuse, citing a backlog of paperwork, but Aaron wasn't having it. The docks were freezing, lashed by freezing rain that cut through my thin trench coat. Warehouse 42 was a massive, echoing cavern of steel shipping containers. I slipped inside the side door, clutching my clipboard, eager to count the crates of electronics and get out. But the warehouse wasn't empty. From the elevated catwalk, I heard the heavy thud of a fist hitting bone. I froze, pressing my back against a stack of wooden pallets. Peeking around the edge, I saw a scene straight out of a nightmare. 3 men in dark suits were gathered around a man tied to a steel chair, and standing in front of them, radiating a pheromone aura so intense it actually made the air feel thick, was Christian Romano himself. He was terrifyingly striking, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp aristocratic features and dark eyes that looked entirely dead. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but the scent rolling off him, crushed cedar, gunpowder, and dark chocolate hit my olfactory receptors like a physical blow. And then, the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen happened. A sharp, searing cramp ripped through my lower abdomen. My knees buckled and my clipboard clattered loudly to the concrete floor. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a gunshot. The men above stopped. Christian's head snapped toward my direction. I tried to run, but my legs felt like lead. The suppressants I had taken that morning, the new batch, Dr. Harrison had given me, they weren't working. The sudden, overwhelming exposure to a dominant alpha's distressed pheromones had shattered my chemical barrier. A male omega's heat doesn't build gradually like a female's. It crashes over you in an instant, a biological fail-safe designed to secure a mate at all costs. I dragged myself toward the exit, my vision blurring, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The scent of warm honey and raw vanilla, my natural scent, hidden for a decade, flooded the damp air of the warehouse. "Find him," I heard Christian's voice rumble, a deep, commanding baritone that sent a humiliating shiver of submission down my spine. I didn't make it to the door. Heavy footsteps closed in behind me. I was flipped onto my back, instinctively baring my neck in submission as a shadow loomed over me. It was Christian. His eyes, previously dead, were now blown wide, the pupils swallowing the irises completely. The alpha instinct had hijacked him. An omega, he breathed, his voice rough, dropping to his knees beside me. A male. I tried to push him away, to beg him to let me go, but the moment his skin touched mine, a shockwave of pure electricity grounded us both. The logic in his eyes vanished, replaced by primal, possessive hunger. And heaven help me, my biology responded in kind. The rest of that night is a fractured mosaic of memory. I remember the roughness of his coat, the heat of his skin, the frantic, desperate claiming in the secluded office of the warehouse. I remember the pain, the overwhelming pleasure, and the terrifying realization that I was being mated by the most dangerous man in the city. When I woke up, the grey light of dawn was filtering through the dirty office window. Christian was asleep on the leather sofa beside me, one heavy arm draped protectively over my waist. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the lingering haze of my heat. I knew if he woke up, if he realized exactly who and what I was, I would never be allowed to leave. I would become a possession, a pet. I carefully slid out from under his arm, gathered my torn clothes, and ran. For 3 weeks I lived like a ghost. I never went back to Whitman & Co. I texted Aaron that I had a family emergency and quit effective immediately. I broke my lease, abandoned half my furniture, and moved into a cramped, drafty studio apartment in the Narrows, a neighborhood so rundown even the Romanos didn't bother shaking down the businesses there. I got a job working under the table as a barista at a dingy 24-hour diner. I thought I was safe. I thought I had escaped the nightmare. But the human body is a cruel master, and male omega biology is the cruelest of all. It started with the exhaustion. I could barely keep my eyes open during my shifts. Then came the nausea. The smell of the diner's cheap frying oil, which I normally didn't even notice, sent me sprinting to the employee restroom to empty my stomach. My best friend, Toby, was the only person who knew my secret. He was a beta, a freelance graphic designer who lived off energy drinks and instant ramen. He cornered me in the diner's kitchen one night after I'd thrown up for the 3rd time in an hour. "Zio, you look like a walking corpse," Toby said, crossing his arms, his usually cheerful face drawn in concern. "Are the new suppressants making you sick?" "I'm fine," I lied, wiping my mouth with a paper towel. "Just a stomach bug." Toby narrowed his eyes. He stepped closer, sniffing the air near my neck. "Zio, you smell different. The suppressants usually make you smell like nothing, like sterile cotton, but right now you smell sweet, almost like—" He stopped, his eyes going wide. "Zio, when was your last cycle?" I froze. A cold sweat broke out over my skin. "Toby, don't. It's impossible. You went into a spontaneous heat 3 weeks ago. You told me you blacked out," Toby whispered, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Did an alpha touch you?" I couldn't answer. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. "Get your coat," Toby said firmly. "We're going to the pharmacy." 20 minutes later, I was sitting on the edge of my chipped bathtub, staring at a small plastic stick resting on the sink counter. Toby was pacing in the tiny hallway outside. "3 minutes are up," Toby called out softly. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick it up. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying to any deity that would listen, and then forced myself to look. 2 bold, unmistakable pink lines. Pregnant. I dropped the test as if it burned me. It clattered to the linoleum floor. I buried my face in my hands and let out a dry, choked sob. Male omega pregnancies weren't just rare. They were high risk, incredibly dangerous, and physically demanding. Without the biological support and pheromones of the alpha sire, the miscarriage rate was astronomically high, often taking the omega's life with it. Toby pushed the door open and saw the test. He cursed softly, kneeling in front of me. Okay, we figured this out. We go to a clinic, a specialized one. We handle this quietly. I can't, I choked out, tears spilling down my cheeks. Toby, you don't understand. It wasn't just some random alpha. Who was it, Zio? Christian Romano. Toby physically recoiled, the color draining from his face entirely. The Mafia boss. The butcher of the South Side. Are you insane? It was an accident. My suppressants failed during an audit at his warehouse. He went feral. I went feral. I grabbed Toby's shirt. Toby, if he finds out, he'll lock me in a gilded cage for the rest of my life. Or worse, he'll wait until the baby is born and then put a bullet in my head. He's already looking for you, Toby whispered, looking terrified. What? Toby pulled out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen before showing it to me. It was a dark web forum, a place where street rumors were traded like stock. The Romano Syndicate is offering a $500,000 bounty for information on a male with a vanilla and honey scent. The boss is tearing the city apart. They've raided 3 illegal suppressant clinics in the last week, Toby read, his voice trembling. They beat Dr. Darcy Harrison within an inch of his life. My blood ran cold. Dr. Harrison knew my real name. He had my old address. It was only a matter of time before they pieced together the trail. I have to leave tonight, I said, sudden frantic energy taking over. I shoved past Toby and started pulling clothes out of my dresser, throwing them into a duffel bag. Zio, you have $200 to your name and you're carrying a Mafia heir. Where are you going to go? Anywhere. Canada. The Midwest. I'll take a Greyhound. I zips the bag shut. Don't contact me, Toby. If they find you, play dumb. I mean it. I hugged my best friend goodbye, perhaps for the last time, and slipped out into the cold night air. The Narrows was quiet, the streetlights flickering as I power-walked toward the central bus terminal. I kept my head down, a thick scarf wrapped around my neck to muffle my scent, paranoid that every passing car was a Romano hit squad. I made it to the terminal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I bought a one-way ticket to a small town in Oregon. The bus was boarding at gate 4. I could see it. Freedom, a chance to disappear and figure out how to survive this impossible pregnancy on my own. I stepped out into the boarding lane, handing my ticket to the driver. Zio Castellani? The voice was smooth, cultured, and came from directly behind me. I froze. I slowly turned around. Standing there were 4 men in immaculate dark suits. The commuters around them had instinctively backed away, giving them a wide berth. In the center stood a man I recognized from the newspaper clippings, Vincent, Christian Romano's underboss and right-hand man. He didn't look angry. He looked entirely calm, which was somehow much worse. Mr. Romano has been looking for you, Zio, Vincent said softly, though the threat beneath his words was deafening. Please, step away from the bus. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied, my voice cracking, instinctively crossing my arms over my flat stomach. Vincent's eyes tracked the movement. His nostrils flared slightly, catching the scent leaking through my scarf. A dark, knowing look crossed his face. Don't make this difficult. The boss is not in a forgiving mood. The car is waiting. 2 of the suits stepped forward, boxing me in. There was nowhere to run. My heart hammered wildly against my ribs as they escorted me out of the terminal and into the back of a waiting black SUV. The drive was silent. Every mile we traveled toward the affluent, heavily guarded North Hills district felt like a nail in my coffin. We pulled through the wrought iron gates of the Romano estate, a massive stone mansion surrounded by armed guards. I was led into an expansive, dimly lit study that smelled overwhelmingly of cedar and dark chocolate. Christian's scent, It was so potent here that my pregnant body betrayed me, my knees weakening, aching for the alpha that had sired the life inside me. The heavy mahogany doors clicked shut behind me. Christian was standing by the fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked older than he had in the warehouse, the shadows under his eyes speaking of sleepless nights. When he turned to look at me, the air in the room seemed to vanish. He set the glass down. He crossed the room in 3 long, predatory strides, stopping mere inches from me. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the anger, the violence. Instead, a warm, rough hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face up. "You ran from me," Christian whispered, his voice a dangerous purr. He leaned in, his nose brushing the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. I felt his entire body go completely rigid. When he pulled back, his dark eyes were blazing with a terrifying, possessive fire. "You're carrying my pup," he stated. It wasn't a question. And in that moment I knew my life of hiding was officially over. I was trapped in the lion's den, and the lion had no intention of ever letting me go. "You're carrying my pup." The words hung in the air, heavy and inescapable. Christian's hand was warm against my jaw, his thumb brushing over my pulse point. My heart was a frantic bird trapped in my ribcage, but incredibly the crippling nausea that had plagued me for weeks instantly vanished. My omega biology was reacting to the proximity of my sire, soaking up his pheromones like parched earth-absorbing rain. "I'm not a breeding mare," I spat out, though my voice trembled, betraying my fear. "You can't keep me here." Christian's expression hardened, the possessive fire in his eyes cooling into a terrifying, calculated mask. "You are an unbonded male omega carrying a high-risk pregnancy in a city filled with my enemies. If you walk out those doors, you won't survive the week. Neither will the child. You belong to me now, Zio. Both of you." I was escorted to a sprawling suite on the top floor of the estate. It was a gilded cage of the highest order. Silk sheets, marble floors, and heavy mahogany doors guarded 24/7 by a hulking beater named Sullivan. For the first 2 weeks I fought them tooth and nail. I threw my gourmet meals at the walls. I refused to speak to Christian, and I spent hours pacing the floor like a trapped animal. But my body was betraying my rebellion. Male omega pregnancies are notoriously brutal. Without a formal mating bond, my system was constantly on the verge of rejecting the fetus. I spiked dangerously high fevers. My joints ached until I was paralyzed on the bathroom floor. The only thing that stabilized my plummeting vitals was Christian. Every evening, regardless of his syndicate business, the ruthless mafia boss would enter my suite. He wouldn't push for conversation. He would simply sit on the edge of the bed, pull my feverish, shivering body against his broad chest, and release thick, calming waves of cedar and dark chocolate pheromones. The relief was always instantaneous. I hated myself for how deeply I craved his touch, how my face would instinctively bury into his neck, seeking the scent gland hidden beneath his collar. "You're fighting your own nature, Piccolo," Christian murmured one night, his large hand gently stroking the slight swell of my stomach. "Let me take care of you. Let me protect what is ours." I didn't answer, but I didn't pull away either. A dangerous Stockholm-esque comfort was settling over me. Christian Romano was a monster to the outside world, but to me, in the quiet dark of my room, he was a fiercely protective anchor. However, the outside world was bleeding into our sanctuary. Whispers echoed through the estate's halls. The Romano syndicate was bleeding territory. The Moretti family, a brutal rival faction led by a sociopath named Beckett, had suddenly grown bold, attacking Christian's supply lines with terrifying precision. It was as if they knew every move Christian was going to make before he made it. There was a mole in our house. I tried to warn Christian. One afternoon, while his private physician, Dr. Sterling, was checking my vitals, I noticed Vincent Christian's right hand manlingering by the doorway, his eyes fixed on the ultrasound monitor with a cold, calculating intensity. "Christian, you need to look closer at your inner circle," I told him later that night. "Vincent, something is wrong with him. He doesn't smell right. His scent is spiked with anxiety like burnt copper." Christian frowned, tightening his grip on my waist. "Vincent has been with my family for 20 years, Zio. He's my underboss. Your hormones are making you paranoid. Focus on resting." He didn't listen. And that arrogance almost cost us everything. It happened on a night when a torrential downpour masked the sounds of the city. Christian was called away to an emergency meeting at the docks, a supposed truce negotiation with the Morettis. He kissed my forehead, leaving a heavy scent mark to soothe me, and promised to be back before dawn. An hour after he left, the heavy mahogany doors of my suite swung open. It wasn't Sullivan. It was Vincent, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. "Time to go, Zio," Vincent said, his voice devoid of emotion. He held a silenced pistol by his side. Panic seized my throat. "Where is Sullivan?" "Taking a long nap," Vincent replied coldly. "Don't make this difficult. Mr. Moretti is very eager to meet the legendary male Omega who brought the great Christian Romano to his knees." I backed away, instinctively wrapping my arms protectively over my stomach. "You sold him out. You're the mole. Christian is weak," Vincent sneered, stepping into the room. "Since he found you, he's lost his edge. He cares more about a freak of nature and an unborn pup than the syndicate. Beckett Moretti offered me the city. All I have to do is hand you over." I tried to scream, but one of the men lunged forward, pressing a chloroform rag over my nose and mouth. The swaggering Entruli noticed. On the swaggering entrabout faded to black. I woke up to the smell of rust, damp concrete, and the overpowering, sickening stench of spoiled citrus. Another warehouse. My wrists were zig-tied to a metal pipe, the cold floor biting through my thin sleepwear. Standing in front of me was Beckett Moretti. He was a slender alpha with a scarred face and a cruel, jagged smile. "Beautiful," Beckett hissed, kneeling to inspect me like a prized calf at an auction. "A male Omega. Do you know how much you're worth on the black market? But killing you, knowing that it will sever Romano's sanity and end his bloodline, that's priceless." He drew a long, serrated hunting knife, the metal glinting in the dim overhead lights. A sharp, tearing pain ripped through my abdomen. The stress and terror were triggering a catastrophic failure in my pregnancy. I gasped, doubling over as best as my restraints would allow, a warm flush of fluid soaking the concrete beneath me. "Ah, look at that," Beckett laughed maliciously. "The little freak is losing the pup. Saves me the trouble. Don't touch him." The voice didn't sound human. It was a demonic, guttural roar that violently shook the dust from the rafters. The warehouse doors were blown entirely off their hinges in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Gunfire erupted, deafening and chaotic. Beckett's men didn't even have time to raise their weapons before they were cut down. Through the smoke and the blood, Christian appeared. He was fully feral. The civilized mafia boss was gone, replaced by a pure, unadulterated apex predator. His eyes were entirely black, his fangs fully descended, and the killing intent radiating from his pheromones was so potent it brought Beckett to his knees in involuntary submission. Vincent, standing by the back exit, raised his gun with trembling hands. Christian didn't even flinch. He raised his own weapon and put a bullet perfectly between his former underboss's eyes. Vincent crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the ground. Beckett tried to crawl away, whimpering, but Christian was on him in a flash. I closed my eyes, unable to watch the brutal, violent end of the Moretti boss, but the sickening crunch of bone told me everything I needed to know. "Seal." Christian dropped the bloody knife and slid across the concrete, tearing the zip ties from my wrists with his bare hands. He pulled me into his lap, his hands frantically assessing the blood pooling around my legs. "Christian," I sobbed, clutching his ruined, blood-soaked shirt. The baby, it hurts. I'm losing it. No. No, you're not, Christian growled, his voice thick with panic and raw desperation. I won't let you. There was only one way to stabilize an Omega in the middle of a biological collapse. The strongest, most ancient tether our biology possessed. The mating bite. Do it, I whispered, baring my neck to him, exposing the sensitive scent gland. Please, Christian, claim me. He didn't hesitate. Christian's jaw locked onto my neck, his sharp fangs piercing my skin, sinking deep into the mating gland. The pain was a sharp, blinding white light, but it was instantly swallowed by a rush of pure, euphoric heat. A chemical and emotional bond slammed into my nervous system like a freight train. I could feel him, his terror, his overwhelming love, his violent need to protect. And he could feel me. The bond flooded my system with his alpha-stabilizing hormones, wrapping around my failing womb like a protective shield. The agonizing cramps slowly began to recede, replaced by a deep, exhaustion-heavy peace. I passed out in the arms of my mate, surrounded by the wreckage of his enemies. 2 years later, the heavy mahogany doors of the syndicate boardroom swung open. The room fell dead silent as I walked in, carrying a stack of financial ledgers. I wasn't shivering in a trench coat anymore. I wore a tailored, bespoke suit, a thick, scarred mating mark proudly displayed on my neck, and carried an air of absolute authority. At the head of the table sat Christian, bouncing a dark-haired, giggling toddler on his knee. Our son, Julian, Aaron, named after the only boss I ever tolerated. The old guard of the Mafia didn't know what to do with a male Omega who balanced the syndicate's books by day and ruled their ruthless boss by night. But they learned to respect me. We had cleaned house after Vincent's betrayal, shifting the family's assets into legitimate businesses. The bloodshed was minimized, the profits skyrocketed, and Christian Romano was finally at peace. I set the ledgers down, leaning over to press a kiss to my alpha's cheek, breathing in the scent of cedar and dark chocolate. I was an anomaly, a mistake of biology. But looking at the family I had built from the ashes of a dangerous world, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. If Zio and Christian's intense Omegaverse journey kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and share this story with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our thrilling audio dramas. Drop a comment below. What was your favorite twist? See you in the next video.